Matthew chapter 5. Our section tonight, part 2. Chapter 5, 13 through 26. There's actually 3 sections. I can just go ahead and put them up now. Those are the 3 sections that we'll be covering tonight. So I'll kind of time how we are on each one so we don't run out of time. Oops. Why did I do that? I don't know why I did that. Let me fix this. Screen. All right. This will be the first one we'll read in just a few moments. Before we get started, we got Brian down for opening prayer. He'll lead us, and then we'll get into our Bible study tonight.
Our God and our Father who art in heaven, we're thankful for the day that you've given to us and for this time that we've set aside to come and worship thee. We pray, Father, that the things that we are about to read and study, we pray that we'll be able to derive those things that you would have us do and to apply them to our lives in such a way that we can be the light of the world. We're thankful so much for your Son who gave his life for us, and that through him we have the forgiveness of sins and the hope of salvation. We pray, Father, that as we live from day to day, we might remember this great gift that you've given to us, and we might be able to let our light shine before our fellow man. We pray for those of our number that are not here that are sick. We pray your blessings would be upon them and that you would restore the health unto them and give them another opportunity to be with us at the next appointed time. Again, be with us through this period of study. These things we humbly pray. In the name of your Son and our Savior, Jesus the Christ. Amen.
Amen. Okay. Matthew chapter 5, 13 through 16. We'll just have these 4 verses read. Nancy, if you'll go ahead and read the 13 and 14, and then Misty can read 15 and 16.
You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing, but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden.
Nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven.
All right. Right off the bat, I want to read a passage over in the book of Colossians, if we'll turn over there quickly. Colossians chapter 4. And it kind of relates to what we've just been talking about as far as that we are to be the salt of the earth. He mentioned in verse 5, walk in wisdom towards those who are outside, redeeming the time. Let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer each one. It's another reference we have in the New Testament to this concept of being the salt and being the light. There's a number of passages that make reference to the concept of light. Once I read this, then we'll go ahead and open it up for discussion. Ephesians chapter 5, he mentions in verse 8, for you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. All right, so what we want to deal with this evening in this first little while, in our first section, is answering this idea, how is it that we are the salt of the earth? What is it that we do? And we can even tie it into the light. You're the light of this world. What is it about you being the salt, we being the light? What are those characteristics that need to be exhibited in this world? So what is it? What's he talking about here? Jane.
Example, influence.
Okay, so right off the bat, you're talking about your example. Number 1. I mean, you're light in a world of darkness, right? But there's got to be more of this. Remember a sermon I preached a while back talking about a grandmother and an uncle of mine that I admired greatly. You know, they were so encouraging, but none of them ever caused me to want to glorify my Father which is in heaven. You see, it mentioned in our reading here, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. So your example, obviously, of good works. Okay? But what else is necessary to be lights in this world of darkness, Mallory?
You have to have a purpose. Because there are a lot of good people in the world. You know, there's a lot of bad people in the world too. But your purpose, you're good for a different reason than the other people are good.
What is that purpose? What is the purpose?
To glorify God.
Yes, and so what is it that you do that's going to help other people glorify God? There it is, okay? You have to teach, okay? You have to speak. I mean, and more specifically, right? I mean, we're talking about, he used the illustration here, you don't put the light under a basket, right? So wait a second here, let's think about this for a moment. Because if I just represent this by a candle here, and you've got this flickering light, let me put a basket over top of that. Is the light still there?
Yes.
Yeah, the light's still there. And so that's a danger. So what's the danger here for you and I of having the light, but it's under a bushel? How do we explain it? I think we can get this. It's not that hard. How is it that we put ourselves under a bushel, but we're still the light? Gene?
Well, no, actually, our light, and other people are seeing that light, then they can be influenced and follow it.
That's exactly right. Mal?
So, in my house, you have overhead lights and you have lamps. If I have the lamp on with the overhead lights, none of the lights seem as bright. But if it's all dark and I just have the lamp on, it's a lot brighter. So if you're surrounding yourself by a bunch of Christians, your light's not going to shine nearly as brightly as if you are putting yourself out there to teach people who don't have any light. And so I think one way we put ourselves in a bushel is that we just surround ourselves by other Christians. Our light's still shining, but we're not making an impact on the world or anybody else.
All right, so you can be, that's one way, and I like that. That's one way that your light is still shining, right? And of course, let's face it, your light can still shine. Is he just talking about the lost? I mean, your light can shine to encourage other Christians to do the right thing, obviously. But he's talking about this world of darkness. But I was also thinking in terms of keeping it to ourselves, like the not speaking. I know what I believe. I believe I have the truth. I know I'm right, but I'm not saying anything. So, my light is there, right? I haven't denied or become an unbeliever, but I'm not letting my light shine. And that's what Mal was talking about, and we need to be thinking about that. We have to think of ways, how is it that we are the light of this world? So our example and the way we speak, is there anything else that comes to mind? Misty?
When you think about salt, its whole purpose is to bring out the flavors and to make things taste better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, we as Christians should be bringing out the better things in life. We should be bringing out the best in each other and in other people.
Do you see that often where in the scriptures where somebody's been doing something wrong but they're praised first? Did you find that in the scriptures? Often, a lot of the letters are written, right? In other words, there's a lot of praise, right? And like the 7 churches of Asia, there's 5 of them, then lowers the boom, but I have this against you. And so I really think that it's important that we try to bring out the best, and then, of course, trying to help them to go on to higher ground. So I really like that. Let's not forget, too, another purpose of salt. Amy?
Salt is used to preserve.
Exactly. And so if you're going to preserve it so it will endure, you're going to have to, not hold it back. And so I think this ties directly into this. we have to see the importance of the word as it's being spoken. It isn't just, if we just focus on our example. Now, our example is good because people not only see what you do, right? What else do they see? They see what you don't do. Right? Do people see what you don't do as much as they see what you do? Absolutely. And I think that's a powerful lesson. It doesn't take people long. What is it when they're around you? What is it they soon pick up on you? Guys, think about this. You're in the world. What do people soon pick up on you that you don't do? What don't you do?
Bad language.
You don't use bad language. What else don't you do?
Don't eat the grapes at the end of the day.
There you go. Powerful, because people think, well, what's so bad about that? What else don't you do, Dave?
You don't associate with those that are doing wrong.
Well, you got to be careful with that. Okay, I understand what you're saying there because companions corrupt good morals. I want to bring up what Mallory talked about. There is a danger, though, that I'm not going to be around sinners. If you're not going to be around sinners, what's that going to mean?
You're putting a bushel over your light.
You're putting a bushel. You have got to be around the lost to help the lost. You've got to be around them. But I know what you're talking about, Dave. You're talking about not being around the wicked, engaging or encouraging what they're doing, endorsing it, right? It's kind of like if somebody's they notice that you always walk away when they're telling a dirty joke. You notice that you don't participate in certain activities either after work or the office lottery. They just know that you're just different. They notice the way you talk about others, don't they? What have they picked up about you in the way when they hear you talk about others?
Well, you're not gossiping and you're not saying bad things about others.
There you go. They soon learn the kind of person that you want. Because what they often say is, if you're around somebody who's always talking bad about others, what do you think when you're walking away? They're talking bad about me. You can be sure about that, right? And so if you convey that idea that you're talking bad about others, they're like going, man, I know you're talking bad about me as soon as I'm away from you too. And it's powerful for us. And so when we think about how that we're in a world of darkness, we've been called out of darkness. And can you think of a passage that uses the word light in it somewhere else? Okay. That's true. I mean, you answered my question. Misty?
1 John talks a lot about that.
He does, right? You got to walk in the light as he is in the light, okay? So we learn about the standard that is there. And I'm going to tell you, folks, we have to ask ourselves, are we really lights in this world? Or we do come here, that's good, but do we go out and are we hiding? Do people really know? And I want to qualify this because I've heard preachers preach from the pulpit, and I've told you this before. They say, your paper boy ought to know that you're a Christian. Well, I don't know if there's any paper boys anymore. Usually, paper boy don't say, hi, I'm a Christian. But we should be living in such a way that if you stopped the paper boy and said, hey, do you know that house you delivered to, that there are a bunch of people who claim to be Christians, the paper boy ought to go, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. What don't you want the paper boy to say? You've got to be kidding. The things I've heard out of their mouth, cussing me for... And, so my point is, you live in such a way that it's not a shock when people, especially if you make the claim, or if the conversation comes up. Because the terrible thing is, you're hiding this under a bushel, and then for a long time, it's a sad... I think Matt's illustration. I think, Matt, I don't want to pick on you, bud, but you picked on yourself, so I'll use the illustration. You talked about this co-worker and the conflict you had, and then you found out you were both Christians. Yikes. Talk about people, covering up, right? And I don't want to be caught, down the road like that one song we sang, you never mentioned him to me. You saw me day by day. You knew I was astray, but you never mentioned him to me. You're calling yourself a Christian, and that you're letting your light shine, and you're telling everybody as a Christian, what are you telling everybody? Who do you want to go to heaven?
Everybody.
That's what you're saying, right? I want everybody to go to heaven, but I don't want to say anything. I don't want to say anything to you, but I do want you to go to heaven. And so we need to be careful about having the devil cause us to think, yeah, we're the salt of the earth, we're the light in this world. You can be those things, but you can render yourself useless, and salt that's lost its flavor, what good's it? Throw it out, be trodden underfoot by men. Al?
I think another thing about salt is a little bit goes a long way. And one person can have a huge impact. And a lot of times we forget that like, oh, I'm one person, I can't do anything. But if we're to be the salt, you can impact a whole lot and not even know it.
Yeah. To keep things in perspective, here's Jesus doing this great lesson. We've got to move on to our second point here. But in the end, who gives the increase? God does. So what we need to understand is that planting and watering might not get results right now. A lot of things are going on behind the scenes. Things are growing. And because of your efforts, it's to say, look, let's have confidence in the power of the light. Let's have confidence in the power of the salt. You talk about a little bit goes a long way. A little bit of light goes a long way. But the point is, it goes a long way because of its source, and that is truth. Jane?
We have to be careful, because you hear, a lot of times a parent is teaching their child something, and they're not basically doing it. And that's bad.
That's exactly right. We don't want...
In other words, if you want to encourage your kids not to drink or whatnot,
Right.
you can't have that beer sitting in that refrigerator.
Yeah, it's so true. I think that as Christians, for the second generation, I think the most powerful thing we need to be aware of is our influence on our kids when we leave here. There's no question that they see you here, they see you participating, they hear you pray, they hear you sing, and they hear you put your hand up in class and participate. They hear all these things. But I'm going to tell you something. Nothing will do more long-term damage to a child, and I can give you hundreds of examples if you want. But I'm going to tell you, long-term damage by being inconsistent. Because a child is going to sit in the back seat and go, they pick up on that. And they see it so clearly. And we think, well, no, they're really not going to look at me a little differently because I'm their parent. Are you kidding me? They hold you up to a higher standard. And we need to be aware of the dangers that are there. So I'm saying consistency in the home. And they'll see you around your friends. They'll see you when you do things. They'll see you during worship day. Kids are so smart. Now, having said that, so are the world. So is the world. I mean, if kids can pick up hypocrisy, do you think adults can pick up on it? In a heartbeat. Okay, we've covered that one. Let's go to our next section now. Let's move up. Bernice, we're going to get you read. Then we'll move up to Dave and over to Amy and across. We'll see how far we get here. We don't want, 17, 18, two apiece. So, Bernice, you're going to read 17 and 18, and Dave gets 19 and 20.
Do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For surely I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or tittle will by no means pass from the law, till all is fulfilled.
Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven.
Oh man, I'm going to tell you, it's going to be tough just to do 12 minutes on this particular section. I was thinking about the life of Jesus, and I'll just read this quickly. Over in Acts chapter 1 and in verse 2, it says, until the day in which he was taken up. I meant verse 1. The former account I made, O Theophilus, of all that Jesus began both to do and teach. Now I want you to pick up on that. All right? In this section. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but he does this idea of do and teach. All right? And what did we have in our reading here in the last part of this? He talks about the responsibilities that we have. Verse 19, whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men, so he shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them. Okay, so we have here, he's got does and teaches. Now, do you think there's an importance of the order here with Jesus and with us? Do you think there's an importance to the order? Can't I teach?
And not do?
And then, yeah, in other words, or teach and maybe later do? You know, I think that there's a pattern here that Jesus, what we learn here, you ever heard the expression, practice what you preach? I tell you, nothing's more powerful in our example, and with the first part too, than doing. Mark?
I will say, if I remember correctly, I think that was one of the criticisms Jesus leveled on the Pharisees, that they say they do not.
That's exactly right. And he even asked the question, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do the things which I say? You know, expect them to do. Yeah.
And do, or does, that's your example. That's
our previous point.
Yeah, yeah.
That's exactly right. And we are expected to teach, but I'm going to tell you guys, nothing will help you more with the words that come out of your mouth than already practicing it, doing it. And we'll get to that in a moment. This first part, I've told you guys in sermons in the past, if you ever need to understand a passage of Scripture in the Bible, it's verse 17. It's a verse you need to underscore in your Bible. It's a verse that our denominational friends will throw at you to say, are you kidding me? We're still under all the law. They don't see a distinction between the Old Testament and the New Testament per se. Oh, on some of the things, they'll tell you, oh, we don't offer animal sacrifices today. But it didn't come to an end. When you tell people we're not under the 10 Commandments, they'll start to lose it. They'll go to this passage to support it. They'll say this, and they'll read it right out of here where it says, Jesus said, do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. How are they reading that verse? How are they reading it? I know what the verse says, but how are they reading it? Misty?
But when you say that we're not under the Old Testament, you're trying to destroy the Old Testament.
That's right. That's exactly right. Mark?
Yeah, but to me, to fulfill is to complete.
Right. You have to see the connection between destroy and fulfill, right? You know, how would you destroy it? You're practically answering this, Mark. How would Jesus have had to have destroyed the law? To not fulfill. It's as simple as that. It's as simple, right? So, fulfill what?
The prophecies.
The prophecies concerning him, right? All he had to do was just not fulfill one of them. Mark.
Well, I think you might have mentioned this in a sermon not long ago about rightly dividing the word, and I think rightly dividing it is, in my mind, just being able to make that distinction between old law and new law.
Yeah, and it's part of that, right? I mean, if you can't see the distinction, you're not going to help anybody, really, in the denominational realm, or anybody that wants to understand the Scriptures, because when I study with people that maybe are not part of a denomination, I really don't have to unteach them. It's still essential that I help them understand the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Misty.
In the next verse, though, he continues on and defines what that fulfilled means. By explaining that none of this will go away until I have accomplished, or until all of it has been accomplished in that law.
Yeah. What were all those things, right? You're talking about all those things that had to be what? They had to be fulfilled. Okay? And we're talking about all the things that were found in the law had to be fulfilled. And so, Mark, go ahead.
I was also going to say, we're also told that if you seek to be justified by the law, you fall into grace.
Galatians 5. It's so true. There are so many passages, but what we want to do is go right to the source. You don't want to panic when they say, well, answer me Matthew 5:17. You need to say, thank you. That's where I wanted to go. You really want them to go there. I told you before when I had the two debates on depravity, on being born in sin. When a guy gets up and says, let's open up our Bibles to Matthew chapter 5, verse 12, and I'm like going, when he's finished talking, I'm like going, put his chart back up there. I love that. Because it isn't, I have my verses, they have their verses. What do we have? Yeah, and we have all of them, right? And so we don't want to avoid, and when you study with your Jehovah's Witness friends, the reason why they're going around from subject to subject because they're trying to stump you on something, that's why you just need to train yourself and say, whoa, stay right here. First one, answer it. We're not going anywhere. Right here. Because their whole point is, if they can get you going somewhere and they stump you on something that you're not educated in, they're going, then all the others wrong too. So I won't do it. I'll just say, stay right here, and we go to this text. So he tells them right up, and I agree, don't think. Now, when somebody says don't think, what's Jesus acknowledging? That people will think it. Don't think this. Well, why would you say that? Well, who in their right mind would think that? Well, that's why I'm saying it. Don't think that I came to destroy the law. Mark.
But isn't the problem is that certain groups want to be able to take the Bible in an a la carte way?
Yeah.
I'll pick some from here. I'll pick some from here. I mean, there is lots and lots of evidence. The perfect example that Jesus uses about the Testament. When is the Testament in force?
That's right.
Upon the death of the individual. When Jesus died, his law, his will and testament became in force.
Right. Hebrews 9. You can't get a better passage than Hebrews 8 and 9. You can't have a testament without the death of a testator. It just goes hand in hand. Mallory.
Well, I think we have to remember who Jesus was talking to and when. The reason I think a lot of times he said, don't think that I came to abolish the law, because a lot of his teachings were so different than what they had been following. So it does sound like he came to destroy it. And he's like, no, I'm going to fulfill it.
Right.
So don't take my teachings as if like it's this new it wasn't new radical thought, but it wasn't contrary to the old law.
And I like what you talked about because you're introducing the fact that who he's addressing here are the scribes and the Pharisees who are making commands, who are breaking God's law. Okay, look what he says here. Let's keep it in its context. Where he said, I'll come back to 17 and 18, but 19 says, it isn't out of the blue. He says, whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so, well, who's that? Scribes and Pharisees. You talk about a bunch of hypocrites. They're breaking the laws left and right. Jesus never broke the law. And so what you have here, I came to fulfill this law. Surely I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or tittle will by no means pass from the law till all has been fulfilled. And so in truth, and this is where people don't get this. It's simple for us because we've studied it many times. What law is Jesus living under here? He's living under the old law. I acknowledge it. Do you know how many times I've studied with people who say we worship on the Sabbath because Jesus kept it? Well, he lived under the old law. Yeah, what's your point? You see, and they just don't get it. They're just like, well, we're supposed to do everything. Do you know when, and you were bringing up, Mark, when did the new law, if they would just read on the night of his betrayal, this is the New Testament in my blood, which is shed for remission of sins. Remember, this is the New Testament in my blood. When I shed my blood, there's going to be a new law. This isn't hard. But I'm going to tell you, the reason people have a hard time with this is because they've never been taught it. And so when you have this smorgasbord idea, you know, buffet, take what you want concept, that this is nothing but general principles to begin with, of course people are not going to rightly divide it. You're going to run into all kinds of problems. And so here's my question. Did Jesus fulfill everything in the law? Yeah, can you think of it? You know, that's what you just have to ask somebody. Well, okay, you think the law is still in place today because Christ hasn't fulfilled something that when they prophesied about the Messiah. Well, was he born of a virgin? You know, did he set up his kingdom? You know, see, there's where they're saying it hasn't been set up because what did they miss?
Churches.
Yeah, and they're thinking physical kingdom. Mark?
Well, I know when I was growing up and just, wrestling with the ideas about the kingdom, I got it confused with where God is. So, so it was easy for me to get, to think, okay, well, the kingdom hasn't come. But that's not, because we're not where God is, but that's not what that is. The kingdom is the church.
Right. And what we need to remember, though, is this kingdom of heaven, it does reach. I'm not in heaven yet, okay? But it's a kingdom of heaven. It's the kingdom of heaven. I'm here on earth, okay? And I'm a part of this kingdom. And it cannot be destroyed, okay? And could I leave? Yeah. Could I? Yeah, sure. I could fall away and those kind of things. But I tell you what, when you're always being taught this physical kingdom, you have this tunnel vision, and that's all you see. You don't see the connection between the church and the kingdom, that they're one and the same, right? And that's the problem. And so what you have is you have people going to this passage, and all I do, because I told you guys, yes, go to this passage and just ask them this one question. Ask them this one question. How would Jesus have destroyed the law? He said, I didn't come to destroy it. How would Jesus have destroyed it? Mark already answered it, and they should answer you by saying, if he didn't fulfill it. Yes. Did he fulfill it? Yes. Okay. And if they come back and say, well, that means it's still intact today. Where are you getting that from? His point was, I didn't come to destroy it. I came to fulfill it. And there's where the confusion comes into play. Good stuff. All right, timing our points. A lot of good comments, guys. These fundamentals are really helpful to us. Oh, I don't want to skip over this again. I'll give it 2 minutes. Look at verse 20. I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees, you'll by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. You mean there was a righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees? Missed it.
When you go to Matthew 23, where he spends the entire chapter condemning the scribes and the Pharisees, he starts that chapter off saying that all that they tell you do and observe and do not do according to their deeds. So they were obviously teaching the right things.
Yes.
And then as you look down there and what they were teaching, they were cherry picking out the things that made them important, and they were placing special importance on that and changing some of the law to suit those needs. And so I think that absolutely there's a righteousness to that because they were teaching truth.
Tell me some, of religious people today. Tell me some positive things from religious groups. Tell me some positive things.
Prayer.
They pray.
Believe in Jesus.
Okay. Strong belief. Are they zealous?
Yes.
Think of some groups that are very zealous, right?
Teach.
Going door to door.
Mormons.
Mormons, right. I mean, they're full of zeal. Are they kind?
Yes.
Very sincere? Nice? Yeah?
Even to Misty's point, a lot of them teach
That's what I say. Teach
truth.
others.
Yeah.
They may not teach the whole truth,
Right.
but they do teach truth. I mean, truth, anyone can teach truth or a truthful fact.
I'll put some over here, okay? Even if we put most. Even if we put most. But we can't get past the fact here that our Lord says, our righteousness needs to be just as good as theirs. No. Our righteousness must exceed the righteousness. I think there are times, and I've told you guys this before, Romans chapter 12, Romans chapter 10, verses 1 through 3. They had a zeal, but not according to knowledge. And I've asked you guys, what would be better? Zeal without knowledge or knowledge without zeal?
Neither.
And neither are right. But what one do we fall into a trap of thinking is better?
Knowledge.
We think knowledge without zeal is way better than having zeal without knowledge. It's a trap we fall into, right? Because we have the truth. We got that light. We're holding it underneath, But we have the truth. Yeah, but you know what? If you don't have zeal, it's just as bad. And we sometimes get caught up in this idea of, well, no, I'm just as righteous. You can't be just as. And I'm going to tell you, if they out-excel us, we're in trouble. We're in serious trouble. Jesus came right up and told them, our righteousness needs to exceed their righteousness. And why? Or you by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. All right. Well, I've got 8 minutes here for this last one. Okay, 21 through 26, Matt. And then we'll come up to Tina and Warren.
You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of judgment. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment, and whoever says to his brother, Raka, will be in danger of the council. But whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hellfire.
Therefore, if you bring thy gift to the altar, and there rememberest that thy brother hath fought against thee, leave there thy gift before the altar, and go thy way. First be reconciled to thy brother, and then come and offer the gift.
Agree with your adversary quickly while you are on the way with him, lest your adversary deliver you to the judge. The judge hand you over to the officer, and you be thrown into prison. Surely I say to you, you will by no means get out of there until you have paid the last penny.
All right. This whole section here, guys, talking about what an evil heart does, some of the problems that stem from it. And one of the things that we notice in this first section is this little tool here where our teeth are. Our mouth can get us into so much trouble. Have you ever heard anybody say, man, I hate him? You ever heard? I hate him. Really? You hate him. Man, I'd like to put a slug between his eyes. You ever say, a Christian saying, I hate him. I wish him dead. Something wrong. Am I wrong? Am I wrong? Does Jesus not want us to be like him? Does Jesus? I'm going to tell you, folks, we as Christians, we talked about we're to be lights in this world of darkness, but I'm telling you, we are being tempted because you and I are around people all the time that will praise you when you say, I'd like to put a slug between his eyes. Would you not? Would you have people praise you for being full of hate? Okay? Now, one of the hardest things we have is to find that balance between hating sin and hating the person. Mark.
Well, what comes to mind is people who have done heinous crimes that under our law are condemned.
Right.
Now, I know personally myself, people do terrible things that make me very angry.
Right.
I don't think that in my adult life I've thought to myself, I hate that individual, but I certainly hate what that person did.
Sure.
And I fully support the sentences handed down to them.
Oh, yeah. Even Paul said that. You do the crime, you do the time. Paul says, if I've done anything worthy of death, I'll accept it. Oh, yeah. There's nothing wrong with saying, I hope that person, he gets what he deserves, justice, I'm not going to go against that. At the same token, is there anybody here that we would not want to go to heaven? You know, I mean, I've heard a lot of terrible things, and I don't want to use vulgarity, and I don't want to spell it out for you guys. But to condemn somebody out of anger and saying, go to a place that's not heaven. Could you imagine that coming from a child of God? Wanting anybody. You know, you talk about anger. And what do you think is going on here? Look what we have here. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment. Well, first of all, who in the world is going to say, listen, if you murder, you could be in danger of the judgment? The scribes and the Pharisees. You're not in danger. You will. That's the point that we have here, is that Jesus comes along and somebody's wanting to twist the law a little bit, you know, and they come back and they say, and whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment. But I say to you, and again, how many times that happened? Whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. What kind of person gets angry with his brother without a cause? Come on. What kind of person? A person with
Well, I was going to say, you know, it doesn't say not to be angry, but it says not to be angry without a cause. And I think, you know, especially this, well, not just this day and age, but always, we have to be careful, because I could say, I'm angry with Chuck, and in my mind, I think I'm justified. I think I have cause, and we have to be careful to look at the situation. Yes, there is justifiable anger, like Jesus was angry with the money changers in the temple.
Sure. Be angry and sin not.
Right, but we have to be really, really careful, and it's easier said than done to, you know, ask ourselves, are we justified in our feelings, or are we, you know, are our feelings hurt? Are we looking too much into something? And it's
you just answered
rough
it.
line to walk.
You just answered it, Matt. Because a person who's going to be angry without a cause is a person who has an active imagination, who is making assumptions when you don't really know. Well, why don't you go to them? Well, and deep down we say I don't want to go to them because deep down you know, well, I may be wrong, but I really think this. And I'm going to tell you, this is serious stuff when Jesus says, whoever is angry with his brother without a cause will be in the danger of the judgment. Whoever says to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. Again, you know, you talked about the Sanhedrin that is there. And then about whoever says you fool shall be in danger of the hellfire. I think it just takes it to another level at each one of these. Again, because of the anger that is there. You talk about, well, at least I didn't kill him. Or I didn't hit him. Yeah, but look at what you said. Look at what you said. And oftentimes, people open up their mouths of hatred towards somebody else. Why does somebody want to share their bad feelings towards this person with you? Come on, why do they want to do that?
They want to partner in crime.
So that you will have the same bad attitude towards them. Simple as that. Now he talks about here, if you got a problem, what do? Go to them. I mean, that's the solution that he talks about here. The problems come when there's lack of communication, Mark.
You know, this is something that I've always been a little bit not sure about, the use of the word fool. Because, you know, if I understand this correctly, you know, if you accuse someone, is that just being a brother you accuse of being a fool? Because people do foolish things.
They do.
And in fact, if we go back and we look at where the farmer who tore down his barns,
yeah, the wise and the foolish builder.
Right. God called him a fool.
Well, even Paul said, the fool, David said the fool has said in his heart there's no God. And of course, there are these foolish people that he talked about in 1 Corinthians Chapter 1. Here he's talking about that which is, again, not to be hateful. These people are. They're being hateful without a cause. And, you know, because he's climaxing here just a bad attitude. This is what hatred that isn't harnessed, right? You can hate every false way, right? I mean, we're told that in Psalm 119. You can hate every false way. But I'll tell you what, can hatred get out of hand? Oh, yeah. Guys, maybe we'll have a little bit of time to finish our I've already gone beyond. But good thoughts. I appreciate it, guys. This goes to show you the Sermon on the Mount. It's powerful stuff. A lot of great lessons we can glean. Mm-hmm. Okay. Great. Because I was down for invitation, and I wanted to swear. He was supposed to sing.
Well, that's what I told him, but he's supposed to do an invitation too. He's supposed to do an invitation too, because him and Matt switched. You want to sing? Yeah. I mean, I don't think he'll want to do both. So we can do both?
Yeah.
Evening, everybody. Good to see everybody out on this wet and warm Wednesday night. We'll be singing 55, Psalm 55 in just a moment. If you're curious, well, I've got two books up here with me. My family's going to be out of town next week, so I'm doing the singing that I was scheduled for and the invitation that I'm supposed to be doing next week. So we'll see how it goes. There might be a reason these two jobs are separate. But anyway, 55 to start us off tonight. Beyond this land of parting. Beyond this land of parting, losing and leaving, far beyond the losses, darkening this, and far beyond the taking, and the bereaving, lies the summer land of bliss. Land beyond, beyond, so very bright. Land beyond, beyond, where is no night. Summer land, God is its light. Oh, happy summer land of bliss. Beyond this land of toiling, sowing and reaping, far beyond the shadows, darkening this, and far beyond the sighing, moaning and weeping, lies the summer land of bliss. Land beyond, beyond, so fair and bright. Land beyond, beyond, where is no night. Summer land, God is its light. Oh, happy summer land of bliss. Beyond this land of waiting, seeking and sighing, far beyond the sorrows, darkening this, and far beyond the pain and sickness and dying, lies the summer land of bliss. Land beyond, beyond, so fair and bright. Land beyond, beyond, there is no night. Summer land, God is its light. Oh, happy summer land of bliss. Song of invitation will be 207. 207.
Turn, if you would, in your Bibles to Ephesians 4. Reading out of there in just a moment. Do again appreciate everybody's attention this evening. A couple of things that I wanted to discuss tonight. The biblical descriptions of Satan are very consistent. We see the same few phrases used over and over, the same themes that keep coming up to talk about him. John 8:44 describes him as the father of lies. Acts 5 and verse 3 talks about how he influences the heart. 2 Corinthians 11:3 calls him the deceiver. 1 Corinthians 7:5 calls him the tempter. Obviously, we could keep going from there, but the themes are well established. I would like to talk a little bit tonight about tempting the tempter. So if you're with me in Ephesians 4, we're going to read a few verses starting in verse 25. Paul makes an interesting point in there. It's kind of just an aside that he throws in. Caught my attention while doing some studying. I wanted to revisit it tonight. So again, Ephesians 4, starting in verse 25. Therefore, laying aside every falsehood, speak truth, each one of you with his neighbor, for we are members of one another. Be angry and yet do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. And verse 27, and do not give the devil an opportunity. That's the side note that I wanted to touch on again. Verse 27, do not give the devil an opportunity. So if Satan needs opportunities, this tells us a couple of things. Namely that he is not overpowering, he's not uncontrollable. He takes the opportunities that he's given. He attacks in a moment of weakness. We can therefore control how much exposure we have to Satan. And when Satan engages in us, we are still in control. I'd like to take a look very quickly, well-known stretch of passages back in Matthew 4. We'll take a couple of things out of that. So as we read out of Matthew 4, verses 1 through 11, I want you to pay close attention to the exchange between Jesus and Satan. I want you to think about this question: who gets desperate as this goes on? Starting Matthew 4, starting in verse 1. And Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And after he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he then became hungry. And the tempter came to him and said, If you are the Son of God, command that these stones become bread. But he answered and said, It is written, Man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. Then the devil took him into the holy city and had him stand on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, If you're the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, He will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. Jesus said to him, On the other hand, it is written, You shall not put the Lord your God to the test. Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, All these things I will give to you, if you will fall down and worship me. And then Jesus said, Go, Satan, for it is written, You shall only worship the Lord your God, and serve him only. Verse 11, Then the devil left him, and behold, the angels came and began ministering to him. So again, I had said, consider this question as we read this. Who's getting desperate? Now, so normally, when we think about resisting something, resisting temptation, we imagine ourselves wearing down, and that every time we say no, that no is a little bit weaker than the time before. There's that risk that if we keep getting presented with the opportunity, we might eventually give in if we're asked too many times. Parents, does that ring a bell? It's not really what's happening here, though, or it's not the whole story. Satan isn't getting the response that he wants. Obviously, that's why he keeps upping the stakes. Satan's offers are becoming larger and larger because he isn't successfully getting Jesus to break or submit to him. So if you look at that closely, what you see is that offering temptation wears on Satan. It's a test of two wills. It's not a one-sided event. So even as you are straining to resist, even as Jesus was straining to resist, Satan is strained as he has to keep tempting. And against Jesus in that stretch of verses, he couldn't sustain the effort, and so he flees. Satan broke first. I say again, Satan broke first there. It was aware on him just as it was aware on Jesus. So this ability to outlast Satan, as Jesus demonstrated, it wasn't anything special or unique to him. It wasn't a quote-unquote perk of being the Son of God or anything like that. Rather, it's something that is available to all of us. James makes it plain. James 4:7, "Submit therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you." How do we do this, though? How do we successfully resist, the opportunities we have? Things to take that I shouldn't, things to say that I shouldn't, things to see that I shouldn't, responsibilities, that I can't ignore and might feel this temptation to. James has that answer back at the start of that verse. We need to submit to God first, as James has called out. There's two active verbs in that sentence telling us success against the devil is not automatic. We have to actively submit to God. As his children, we have to actively resist the devil, so that then the sum of those two things is that the devil will flee from us just as he fled from Jesus. We can do these things. The scriptures are clear. It's something that we can take confidence in. How do we submit to God? How do we show this obedience to him? Matthew 28:19 and 20 gives us that answer. Obedience starts with the act of baptism. We continue from there by observing all that he has commanded, as the verse says. This gives everybody in the audience a couple of things to consider tonight. If you haven't taken that first step in obedience, the waters of baptism are available for us to make use of this very evening. If we have something to address, we can certainly do that. You've already taken that first step, and you are subject to that second part of the command, that you need to be observing all of the things that Jesus has taught, and you find that perhaps you have fallen short in some regard. There's something that you have not been living up to. You likewise have an opportunity to make that right as well, in whatever manner might be needed. The congregation here is at the ready. We can pray with you. We can pray for you. Whatever your needs might be this evening, I would encourage you to make things known as we all stand and sing Song 207. Hark the gentle voice of Jesus fallen tenderly upon your ear. Sweet his cry of love and pity calleth. Turn and listen, stay and hear. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, lean upon your dear Lord's breast. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, come and I will give you rest. Take his yoke, for he is meek and lowly. Bear his burden, to him turn. He who calleth is a master holy. He will teach if you will learn. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, lean upon your dear Lord's breast. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, come and I will give you rest. Then his loving tender voice obeying, bear his yoke, his burden take. Find the yoke his hand is on you laying, light and easy for his sake. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, lean upon your dear Lord's breast. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, come and I will give you rest. Appreciate everybody's attendance here this evening. It was good to be able to get out at midweek, get away from the world for a little while, focus on spiritual things instead. As I mentioned, my family will be out of town this coming week. We'll be taking off Saturday morning. out for the week. We'll be back the following Sunday. We have several other announcements. I know the monthly class is coming up.
Friday night at our place at 7. Acts 13. Young Baron is not feeling well tonight. And let's be praying. Dustin has an interview tomorrow, so we hope that that goes extremely well.
I'll be traveling to the farm this weekend.
Anybody else, any other things that need to be announced yet this evening? If not, Mark, you were listed for the closing prayer.
Merciful Father, who art in heaven, Lord, we humble ourselves before you. Thank you for this day of life you give us, for the opportunity and privilege as your children to assemble in the quiet of this place, Father. Set aside the cares of this life and to open your word and study and meditate upon it. Pray, Father, that each time that we do these things, that you will open our minds to your will, that we might understand it, that we might be able to remember it, and that the most important of all, we practice it, put it into practice. And as we talk tonight, let's not let our lights be hindered, but let it shine in hopes that the people that we are in contact with in our daily lives, we might have an opportunity to teach the name of Jesus to them, teach the truth. There's so many, Father, in the world that think they have Jesus, but they have not looked into your word, into the gospel. They've not looked and tried to understand it. Know that you have given us instructions, and that you have given us your word in such a way that we can understand it, and we must understand it. And we must practice it. We must live it out. We pray, Father, that we will be those who do, and then try to teach that as well, and not just merely hearers and say and do not. Help us, Father, to remember tremendous cost of our salvation. Help us never, Father, to take it lightly, but to realize the suffering, the agony, and all the things that Jesus endured, because we were in a lost state. We were outside of your kingdom, and we were without hope. But yet, through his death upon the cross, we can have our sins forgiven, and we can join your family. And we're so humbled by that, Father, that Jesus has not only made it possible for us to go to heaven, but for us to be heirs of eternal life. And that's such a wonderful thought. Help us, Father, to think about these things as we live our daily lives. When Satan comes to us in our minds to tempt us, help us to remember these things. That there is a much better day that's going to dawn for the people. And we pray that you will help us, Father, to do all that we can to live honorably and righteously before you. And we ask you to look down upon us in tender mercy. Please forgive us when we failed you. Help us, Father, to learn from the mistakes that we make in this life, and we might not continue to repeat the same things. We pray that you be with us now as we go to our homes and give us a safe journey there. If it be your will, we might open our eyes into a new day. Make this prayer in Jesus' most holy name. Amen.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.